All right, good morning, agents. This is Kevin Lauren. I'm the Director of Training and Marketing. And today we're going to be going through 1031 exchanges with Jordan Phillips. So before we get into, first of all, good morning, Jordan. How are you today?
Morning. How are you, Kevin? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So Jordan, before we get into today's presentation, we're going to bring on Bill Seitz from Clearview Mortgage. And Bill, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Jordan.
All right.
Morning.
So it looks like we don't have Cameron with us this morning. Is that right, Bill?
No, Cameron's traveling today, but I'm going to do a quick little fill-in for him.
Perfect. And what I'll do is I will share the 10-year treasury for you.
Yeah. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on a Wednesday webinar. So the main headline this morning regarding financing is the S&P 500 falls as traders brace for half-point rate hike from the Fed. So as we're in these kind of turbulent market environment, this morning it's about 1 o'clock Eastern time. They're going to release the, basically the decision, but everyone's anticipating a 50 basis point rate hike, which will further increase the cost of money in residential and in all financing applications. So it's just something to be aware of. I am noticing that, I had some phone calls with some agents this last week, and, it's something to be really on top of now that the rate environment is changing so quickly, just to make sure your pre-approvals are up to date, make sure that you fill out the contract properly and put in a rate, put in a percentage of a rate that they cannot exceed. That way you protect your buyers, and, because sometimes they're not qualifying now. And if you put in there, 4%, and now the rate is 4.5%, 5%, maybe on a FHA or, whatever kind of financing you're doing, well, then that's another layer of protection, right, for your buyers. So just be mindful of that. And also the appraisals seem to be a little bit more conservative. I'm kind of hearing of appraisals being a little bit, I don't know if the banks are kind of softly telling the appraisal world just to be a little conservative, but it seems to be that some of the values aren't coming in as expected. Just had one myself where we had to get 2 appraisals. One came in at the mark, and the other one came in $50,000 less. And we disputed it, provided additional comparables, and the appraiser still held his ground and said nope. So we had double apped the loan, meaning we had put it at 2 different banks to try to get the best terms. And unfortunately, the appraisal that came in low was with the better term bank. So the clients had to come in with the additional $50,000 on top of their down payment. So, things seem to be getting a little bit rougher in some areas on that end. And just be aware of these things, and know that, you have, a job to make sure that you're up to speed with what's going on in this, constantly changing rate environment.
Oh, for sure. And wouldn't you say that is a great indicator of at least a precursor to a softening market?
Well, yeah, I think especially on the buyers that are maybe entry level buyers that are kind of scraping to get into the market, and they've been waiting, and maybe they only have 5% down and they're kind of tight on closing funds. As these rates creep up, their purchasing power is going to decline, and I think you are going to see a little bit of softening here in the next few months.
Yeah, that sounds about right. All right, perfect. Well, Bill, appreciate the update in mortgage land out there, because it's a huge, huge story. And so we appreciate you keeping your eye on that for us.
Daily, buddy.
That's right. That's what you guys do. So remember, guys, if you have any questions about mortgages, you want to get pre-quals, you want to get cross-quals, your team at Clearview Mortgage is your go-to spot. So if you haven't tried them yet, check them out. Nothing but good things to say from most of the agents that have tried them. Right, Bill? All right, perfect. So we are going to shift gears. Before we shift gears to Jordan Phillips, just going to remind everybody that we did come out with our content piece for your blogs and for your newsletters. So that it was emailed to all of you, but you can always find those on our corporate website, arghome.net, under the About area and News and Insider Tips. So our May newsletter is right here. You can click on that. You can copy and paste all that information into both your newsletters and your monthly and your blogs. So important stuff there. So without further ado, we're going to bring Jordan Phillips on the line, and I'm going to stop my screen share, Jordan, and you can go ahead and take over, my friend.
Okay, very good. I have a PowerPoint, so I will put that up.
Yeah, so this is I think the second webinar that we've had Jordan join us on. And so he is our go-to specialist for 1031 exchanges.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for having me on. You guys are brave coming to another 1031 exchange class, learning about tax law again. Wow, that's, congratulations. Yeah, it's always a good time to at least refresh yourself on the basics of 1031 exchanges, especially now, over the last 2 years, our company has done a historic number of 1031 exchanges. Now, as interest rates start to hike, as we spoke about, will that change and start to soften? Probably. But to put things in perspective, in 2021, our company nationwide did about 40,000 1031 exchanges, and about a quarter of them took place in Southern California. So there's a very good chance that, if you're working with investor clients or want to go after investor clients, that they will be looking to do 1031 exchanges. And the reason being is, appreciation is very, very high. Tax rates are still, relatively high as well. So when you blend that together, doing a 1031 exchange, which allows you to sell investment real estate and defer paying your capital gains taxes, is always an attractive option, to go after sellers with, right? Because right now, if you have a seller who's looking to sell and just cash out, bite the bullet, pay their taxes, when you blend together federal taxes and the state of California, most of our California clients are somewhere in that low to mid 30% tax range. So that's a pretty big chunk of their gain to just give away to the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board. So, that's where doing a 1031 exchange comes up and is a very, very, very popular wealth preserving tool. So what I'd like to go through today are just the basic guidelines. Doing a 1031 exchange isn't overly complicated, but there are a few things that you need to know, or your clients need to know going into it. And I just want to cover those for you, so everything's kind of fresh in your mind, going forward. So the first thing, let me see if there's a chat. Okay. So really, there's 3 basic guidelines when doing a 1031 exchange. And these 3 questions make up pretty much all the questions that I get from my clients. First is, what kind of property can I purchase? So fortunately, the IRS, who typically is a pain in the ass on a lot of things, is actually pretty flexible when it comes to this in a 1031 exchange. So the IRS says that the property type that you sell and buy in a 1031 exchange actually doesn't matter. And you can sell and buy anywhere in the 50 United States. The only requirement that the IRS puts is that when you're doing a 1031 exchange, what you're selling and buying is either investment or business use real estate, right? So a lot of our clients, they think, oh, I have a single family rental, I got to sell it, and I got to go out and buy the other one single family rental that's available in this market to complete my 1031 exchange. Fortunately, that is actually not the case. So, you could sell a single family rental, go out and buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex, anything commercial, so office, multifamily, retail, and all that qualifies. Vacant land qualifies for a 1031 exchange. A lot of clients think that, in order to be an investment, the property needs to be income producing. That's actually not the case. A lot of our clients who own vacant land, they want to, they've been owning it, paying property taxes, not generating any income. they can absolutely sell that and go out and buy income producing real estate. And the term real estate is very broad. So things like air rights, water rights, mineral rights, cell towers, windmills, all of that actually qualifies for an exchange. Not that we really have a lot of clients who sell windmills or billboards and do exchanges, but it's just more of just to open your mind to let you know that, hey, look, 1031 exchanges are pretty broad as far as what actually qualifies. For example, I also said you can sell real estate that you use in a business as well. So right now I have a client who runs a fish packing business, right? So he bought a property about 4 years ago for $5 million. So he got an unsolicited offer to sell that property recently for 13 million. So he could either bite the bullet, basically pay, have 8 million of capital gains taxes and pay a few million in taxes, or what he's doing is selling his property he used in his business, going out, buying a property that he's going to also use in his business, and then also single family rentals that he's going to use and generate income for himself. So the ability to mix and match property types, mix and match locations. For example, we have tons of clients who are selling in California and basically buying anywhere else in California. So Arizona, Nevada, Florida, Texas, that is absolutely doable in a 1031 exchange. So the term like kind, all that means is that you need to sell and buy either real estate used as an investment or in a business, and you will qualify for a 1031 exchange. So
Real
that
quick,
is the, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Jordan.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer it. So John Espinosa asks, how about investing in REITs? And I don't think that works.
So REITs, so real estate investment trust, that does not qualify. Right. And the reason being, when you buy into a REIT, what you're actually purchasing is an interest in a company. So like a REIT will sell out like a stock share or a partnership interest. And in a 1031 exchange, you do need to actually acquire real estate in order to qualify. But as you can see on my screen, there's an alternative to a REIT called a Delaware Statutory Trust, a DST. So that is a very common, it's basically an alternative to a REIT. But so in a REIT, like I said, the company is selling out an interest in the company itself, where a DST is a similar setup. Instead, the company is actually selling out a portion of the real estate. So for example, you have what's called a DST sponsor. They'll go out, they'll buy, very high performing commercial assets like shopping center, for example. And what they'll do is they'll sell out a fractional interest in that property. So instead of acquiring a shopping center, which not a lot of our clients have the ability to do, they can go out and buy a 1% interest in that shopping center through a DST. So that is a very, very common, probably makes up 15 to 20% of our clients utilize DSTs to either go completely passive, or for example, they have a little bit of cash left over in their exchange and they just roll it into one of these DSTs. So very, very common.
All right, perfect. So I hope that answered your question, John.
So as we spoke about, property types don't matter. What does matter is property use. So a couple of uses that do not qualify for a 1031 exchange, and this comes up all the time. Primary residences, you can't sell or buy your primary residence through a 1031 exchange. You cannot sell or buy a second home. You can't sell or buy, development projects or short-term flips. So a couple of things on this. The IRS, like for example, we have a lot of our clients who might sell an investment property and they would like to purchase a home they move into, right? maybe they want to buy a house next to their grandkids or something along those lines. So the IRS does say that any property you purchase in a 1031 exchange, for the first 2 years, the property would need to be used strictly as an investment property. After 2 years are up though, after you purchase it through the exchange, you could do whatever you want with that asset. So for example, let's say, you own an investment property here in Southern California. Let's say your kids live in Texas, right? And you want to buy a house and live next to your kids. So what you could do is, in that example, is to sell the investment property in California, go out, buy your replacement property in Texas, hold it as an investment for 2 full years. After 2 years, if you want to move into that house or have it as a second home, after that 2-year period, the IRS cannot actually challenge the 1031 exchange. So you would be in the clear. So that is black and white tax law, that 2-year period. And a lot of our clients actually do end up taking advantage of that. It gives them flexibility, right? So they have the ability to defer their taxes through their exchange and then actually get utility out of the property personally, down the line. And then as far as short-term flips are concerned, that also doesn't qualify. Now, what we have clients do is, basically buy a property, fix it up. Most CPAs will say if you then, rent it out for a year period and then sell it and try to do an exchange, that should qualify for the exchange. But, buying a property, fixing it up, immediately selling it, unfortunately, that does not qualify as an investment for 1031 purposes. So these are the uses that do not qualify for an exchange. There's a chat. So the question is, what is the holding period? So that's actually an interesting question. So there's nothing black and white in the tax code that says how long you need to hold a property in order to qualify for a 1031 exchange. What the IRS looks at is your intent when you buy the property. And this actually comes up pretty frequently in today's market. For example, we'll have clients who buy a property, 6 months later, they'll get an unsolicited offer to sell that property for 50% more than they bought it for. And we've had clients who have done 1031 exchanges on that scenario, right? Because their intent when they bought the property was to hold it as a long-term investment, but they just so happened to get this great offer that they couldn't refuse. And most CPAs, will be okay with that. Now, as far as just generally speaking, you probably do, that's a pretty special circumstance. Generally speaking, most CPAs will want to say that you hold the property for at least a full year before selling it and doing an exchange. Some conservative CPAs will say 2 years. But like I said, there's actually nothing black and white in the tax code. It's all about your intent when you bought the property. So I hope that helps to answer that question. So as we talked about, the IRS, they're flexible as far as what you can buy, as far as property types. What they are not flexible on are the actual timelines involved in doing a 1031 exchange. So the IRS does impose very, very strict timelines when you're actually going out and buying your replacement property. So basically, if you're representing a buyer in a 1031 exchange right now in this market, you do have, well, in my opinion, the hardest role in a 1031 exchange. And the reason being is once the sale property closes, that's when the 1031 exchange clock begins. So from the closing of the sale, your client will have 2 time periods that they're going to need to be aware of. The first is the identification period. So this is the real, pain in the backside is from the closing of the sale, your client will have 45 calendar days to identify a list of potential replacement properties. So they are limited on how many properties they can identify. The most common is what's called the 3-property rule, meaning they can identify 1, 2, or 3 properties, and they can be any value. The good thing about the 45 days is you can change that list of 3 properties as much or as little as you would like within the 45 days. And to identify a property, all your client needs to do is actually just give us an address of the property. So you don't need to be in escrow under contract to actually identify a property. But whatever properties are identified to us by the end of day 45, they would have to ultimately close on 1 or more of those properties. So for
Hey,
example,
Jordan,
yeah,
so in a market that we've been in the last couple of years and still fairly busy, if they identify 3 properties and don't get into contract in any of the 3, are they SOL, or do they get another, stipulation or extension? Or
so the IRS, the only time the IRS actually issues extensions are due to federally declared disasters. So for example, back in September of 2020, there were some wildfires in Southern California, which the IRS did allow for extensions on both the 45 days to identify and the 180 days to close. But unless you're going to go out there and essentially start the fire yourself and guarantee yourself a natural disaster, I wouldn't bank on getting any extensions on the identification period. So yeah, if you're not able to close on one of those identified properties, the IRS doesn't care. They would actually prefer that your client fails and pays their taxes. So you would be essentially SOL. Or for example, if you found a property after day 45, unfortunately, that could not be a part of the exchange as well. So I know in this market, it's tough to get, contingent offers accepted, but there's nothing that says that you can't go out, prior to your sale closing, going out, making offers, start the shopping process as early as possible. At the end of the day, I would say probably about 75 to 80% of our clients are successful. The ones who aren't, I hate to say it, are the ones who procrastinate, maybe a little bit lazy, I guess you could say. But as long as you're going out, being aggressive, I'm not saying it's not challenging, it is for sure, but it's definitely a doable transaction. And the good thing is that you have a total of 180 days to actually close on the purchase, which, the only time I ever see that be an issue is in the event of potentially new construction. For example, I have a lot of clients or not a lot, but a few clients who sell California, go out and buy new construction in like Nevada, Arizona. And sometimes there could be delays as far as actually completing the property to purchase. But outside of that, closing in 180 days never really is an issue. It's all about that 45-day identification period. So those are the timelines. That is a key. That's the second question that I get. The first is, what can I buy? Second is, how long do I actually have to purchase it? And the third question is, what do I need to actually purchase for value-wise in order to defer all of my gain, right? So a lot of clients think, I just need to reinvest my initial investment or my capital gains amount. So in order to defer all taxes, the value of the property that you purchase needs to be equal to or greater than in value to the property you sold. Now, on the sales side, you can deduct things like closing costs. So if your client pays commissions, title fees, escrow fees, they can deduct that. So for example, if after closing costs, they sell for $1 million, they would have to buy for $1 million or more to defer all their taxes. So within that, they would have to, reinvest all the cash from the sale into their next purchase or purchases. And they do need to replace the value of the debt that was paid off. Now, clients get confused on this component. They think, oh, I had a loan, I had to get the same amount of debt on the purchase property, or else I'll pay some taxes. That's actually not the case. So we'll go over a fake example. Let's say your client sells for $1 million, and let's say they had a $200,000 note that they paid off and $800,000 of equity. So to defer all their taxes, they would have to buy for $1 million or higher. They would have to use all 800,000 of equity towards that purchase, and they would have to replace the value of that $200,000 note that they paid off. So most of our clients will do that by getting a new note, but if they have cash, they could bring in extra cash as well, or a combination of the two. So for example, if they wanted to buy a property for $1 million, use all 800,000 of cash from their sale, and then bring in an extra 200,000 of cash and purchase the property all cash, that would qualify as complete tax deferral in the exchange, because they're replacing the value of that debt with cash, which is fine. Let's see what. Okay. So that's how you get complete tax deferral in the exchange. So if you sell and buy investment real estate, you meet the timelines and you basically buy for equal to or greater than in value, all of your taxes would be deferred indefinitely. So, these are the motives for doing an exchange, right? I mean, a lot of clients, they just think of the tax deferral benefits, but there's a lot of non-tax deferral benefits that go with doing a 1031 exchange. You can sit down with your clients. They probably have multiple investment properties. Doing a 1031 exchange allows them to maybe buy a property that's going to cash flow better or appreciate better. Some of our greedy clients want a property that's going to cash flow and also appreciate better, which is possible. 1031 exchange allows you to either consolidate your portfolio, which a lot of our older clients like to do. Maybe consolidate 3-4 properties into one common purchase. A lot easier to manage that way, or diversify. That comes up a lot when clients sell in California and go out and purchase in other states where properties are cheaper. You can buy multiple properties in a 1031 exchange, and also estate planning. So as I mentioned, 1031 exchange is a indefinite tax deferral, meaning that if you never actually sell and cash out of that property, you will never pay capital gains taxes. So basically, if you hold that property until you pass away, your heirs receive that property with what's called a step up in tax basis, meaning that all of your capital gains that you accrued while you were alive get wiped out upon death. So that's what's called, a lot of our clients do this, it's called swap until you drop. So basically you 1031 exchange, die, and then your heirs receive that property. They can then sell it the next day and pay zero in capital gains taxes. So that's also another motive to preserve your equity, do the exchange, and set up your heirs for a potentially better future, I guess you could say. Another thing I want to touch on real quick, as we mentioned, the timelines are kind of a pain in the backside, especially that identification period. So what I get tons and tons of questions on are what's called a reverse 1031 exchange. So a reverse 1031 exchange is where you actually go out and purchase the property first. So you go out, purchase the property first, and then from the closing of the purchase, you would then have 180 calendar days to go ahead and sell the current property. So that right there gets a lot of clients very excited. They know, okay, I can go out and buy the property, selling my current property in 180 days. That's not going to be an issue. So let me explore a reverse exchange. So that's the good part. The downside with doing a reverse exchange is that they are more complicated transactions. The reason being, in a reverse 1031 exchange, you can't actually be on title to both the property you're buying and selling at the same time. So what happens in a reverse 1031 exchange is us, as the accommodator, we actually have to create an LLC and go on title to the purchase property. So we're the ones who initially take title to that purchase property. And then once the sale closes, we then transfer over the purchase property to your client, and that completes the reverse 1031 exchange. So a couple of notes on that is a lot of our clients, first of all, they'll need the money from their sale property to go out and actually buy the purchase property, which they won't have. Also, getting financing sometimes can be a challenge for sure, because essentially what we require from the lender, like if your client's getting a loan to buy the property, we have certain non-recourse language that the lender needs to approve of, which basically says, if for whatever reason your client doesn't make payment while we're on title, they can't come after us, the accommodator, which sometimes lenders are flexible with, sometimes they're not. So getting a financing could be challenging. And also, frankly, reverse 1031 exchanges are a hell of a lot more expensive than a standard exchange. So a standard exchange where you sell first, buy second is about $1,000. Reverse exchanges start at about $6,000. So the cost is exponentially higher. So where we see reverse exchanges be popular, clients who have cash, they can go out, close on a property all cash, don't mind paying a little bit higher fee, and take their time to sell their property. So reverse exchange is very popular, but you just have to know that there are some, feasibility questions and a little bit more cost involved when going down that route. So what my role is IPX 1031, we're what's called a qualified intermediary. So anytime you actually do a 1031 exchange, what you cannot do is actually touch the funds in between the sale and the subsequent purchase. So if your client's doing a 1031 exchange, they would have to engage someone like us prior to the sale closing. So this comes up, once a week. I'll get a call from a client who says, "Oh, I just sold my property, and I just got my funds. Now I want to do a 1031 exchange." So unfortunately, at that point, doing a 1031 exchange, it would be too late. So doing a 1031 exchange needs to be set up prior to the sale closing. So we have to, draft a set of 1031 documents. They need to be signed prior to close. And then from there, those funds come into us, the qualified intermediary, where we hold them until your client buys their next property. So a little bit about our company. So IPX 1031, we're wholly owned by Fidelity National Financial. So the same company that owns Fidelity Title, Chicago Title, Lawyers Title, High Court Title, Commonwealth. They also own us as well. So we are the most financially secure qualified intermediary in the country, which is important because we will be holding your client's proceeds for basically up to 6 months. So just as a little side note, in every transaction, your client's funds are held in a completely segregated account, which is protected by our own $100 million Fidelity bond and a $30 million E&O policy. So if a client's shopping around for a qualified intermediary, definitely the number one question that they should be asking is, how are you protecting my money? Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. When they go out and buy their property, those funds need to be there for the purchase. So my role within the company, I am in business development. So I help, with any questions that you or your clients might have. So I'm more of in the planning phase of the 1031 exchange. So, as questions pop up, my full contact information is on this slide. That is my email. That is my cell phone number. I cover Orange County and San Diego County. So my primary office is in Carlsbad, San Diego. I also have an office up in Newport Beach, so I kind of split time between the two. But if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Always have my phone on me. Always have my email, checking emails all day. So anything you need, just let me know. Always happy to help. So that's really all I wanted to go over today, was just a kind of a brief overview. And if you need anything else, please let me know. And I got one more question. So
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's a good question. It says, please tell us about partial exchanges and boot. So partial exchange. So we can go back to our previous example. So for example, if you have a client, let's say they sold for $1 million and they go out and they buy something for $900,000. So a lot of our clients think, oh, that'll blow my entire 1031 exchange. So actually that is what's called a partial 1031 exchange. So in a partial 1031 exchange, still valid, but that $100,000 that they buy down in value by, that will be what's called taxable boot. So if they sell it for $1 million, buy for 900, they'll have 100,000 of taxable boot, meaning that they're just going to have to pay taxes as for capital gains on that $100,000 difference. So partial exchanges still work, but they would have to pay some taxes.
That makes sense. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for all that incredible information. And I will be putting out your information to all of our agents that are on the line. And when I put out my replay, so anybody that needs Jordan Phillips' expertise, don't hesitate to contact him directly. Jordan, thanks again for being on the line. And yeah, absolutely. Agents, I want you to get out there and make it a productive week and a great week. And we will see you guys. Actually, next week, we're going to be taking off. No webinar next week, but we will see you guys the following week on another action-packed webinar. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later.